Okay, let's do it. Let's get back into it. It's been a minute, but I am really excited. It feels really good to be back in front of the mic and hopefully a setup that's working again. I do have a small fear that my technical setup is going to somehow fail me today because it's been a little while and hopefully I remembered all the right buttons to press and all of that. But anywho, so it is, what day is it? October 7th, Tuesday. And I have just gotten back from not just gotten back, like a week ago. Got back from a long trip in New Zealand and it was incredible. I've had 2 episodes go out in September while we were gone. I didn't promote them at all, so I need to do that now. But yeah, we had such a good trip. And I was listening to a couple bits from the previous 2 episodes, and they're kind of ironic now, as is the episode as a whole. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into that. But today we're talking about careers. But before we get into that, let's just do a quick catch up. So, as I said, I was just in New Zealand for a month. The kind of reason behind that trip was I had a month-long sabbatical with my company. After 3 years at the company, you get a 4-week like extra vacation. They call it a sabbatical, but I mean, you do have to take it at once. So it was 4 weeks. And then if you wait till year 4, then you get 5 weeks. If you wait till year 5, you get 6 weeks. And so I had just decided to take my sabbatical this year. I needed a bit of a break. And yeah, the plan had always been in September, some big trip. And we decided on going to New Zealand and doing a van trip. And it was absolutely amazing. If you follow me on my social media, you're probably like, dear Lord, stop talking about this trip. But it really was. It was the best. If you have any questions about a trip to New Zealand, reach out to me. I'm happy to share whatever bits of, tips that I have from the trip that we did. But I highly, highly recommend. It was stunning. It was really nice because it was just like arrive, decide what we want to do that day, and yeah, go with the flow. And the van life itself, I've gone on a couple of van trips before with one of my best friends and her family. And so I've known that I've liked the van life, but I have never taken my husband and we've never done a van trip together, the 2 of us. And it was so good. It was really nice. There's not that unpacking and repacking, checking into hotels, any of that. You just like unpack your stuff when we first got there and then it just stays. And oh, that's so nice. I hate living out of a suitcase. So it was really a perfect way for us to travel. We're definitely going to be doing that again. Well, I hope. Maybe next time, like within Europe or something like that. But yeah, so I think as I said, reach out to me if you have any questions. If you are looking at doing a trip to New Zealand at any point, reach out to me. I have some tips, of course, based on like what we've done there. And I'm always happy to talk about anything travel related. So yeah. Now, getting back from the trip that was sad. It's always tough to kind of like readjust to reality. And like one thing that was interestingly hard was like not spending 24/7 with my husband, because on the trip, we're literally together 24/7. And now that Marcus has gone back to work, and it's just like, that was sad. It was tough like this last week being apart and like actually having time alone. And yeah, just in general, just like readjusting to life back in Finland and our routines and all of that it's always nice in a way when you get back from a trip to just like do your normal things again, going to your grocery stores, going to the places that you like to go, having your bed again and all of that. So it's definitely been nice to be back, but we could have stayed another 3 months and just like explored more. But yeah, also still happy to be back in our space, going to my yoga studio again, Pilates, all of that. It's been really nice to get back into some sort of routine. Now I say some sort of routine because kind of touching on the why this episode is ironic, and even some things that I said in the last few episodes, is that I actually got laid off the day before my sabbatical started. So that was interesting. So just some backstory here. That's weird to say. I worked for an Estonian remote company and called Toggle, and I loved working there. Really great company. I liked what I did. But I was starting to get to the point where, as I said, I needed that sabbatical. I had been at the company at this point like 3.5 years, and I was just kind of needing a change or a break. Got a more permanent break than I had hoped for. But yeah, in basically like my portion of the company, it was a startup, so uh, things were always like a little bit, what should I say? Like stressful. Like there was always an undertone of stress because our product was not profitable. And so in general, I've only worked for startups. So I'm used to working in this environment, but at the end of my time there, in the last like even year, the stress was pretty obvious of like, what's the plan? Is the end near? What are we going to do with the product? Like, are they going to continue investing in us and all of this stuff? So it was getting pretty tiring. And all of that to say, especially in the last few months, I was pretty aware of the fact of like where the company was headed. And Toggle exists still. There's many products within the company or the brand. And it's just my portion of the company that they decided to pull the plug on. And so then I got laid off, and as I said, it wasn't like a huge surprise. I had been knowing for many months this was likely coming, but it's always very different to say that you think you're going to get laid off than to actually be in that conversation and have that happen. And just like on top of it all, it was just really bad timing. I don't know. At the time, I thought it was really bad timing. Looking back, I don't know yet how I feel about the timing, but yeah, it felt like really bad timing because it was literally like 5 hours before my month off at the company is supposed to start. And so that was rough. And also it was some of our best friends. They were getting married that Friday that I got laid off. They had a welcome party, and then the next day was their wedding. So it was just a lot. It was like a lot on that day itself. And yeah, thankfully I got a very good severance package, so I feel still very taken care of by the company. I am very thankful for that, and I am now in the middle of what the heck am I doing? Just in terms of the timing, as I said, I think that at the time I was like, oh, this is terrible timing. But now I was able to, for our like New Zealand trip and stuff, I really didn't think about work much at all. I think if I had known, because everything was really up in the air at the end, and if I had gone on the trip and been like, who knows what's going to happen when I get back? I don't know. Like that really would have been on my mind quite a lot. I would have been quite stressed about it, I think. And so just being able to go to New Zealand and be like, all right, this is the end, like it's done. And that was kind of the beginning of my new chapter, whatever that will be. It was, it really felt like it could be, that trip was like the transition period of whatever I'm going to do next. Because I knew before I left the bad news that I was going to be done there. All of that to say, today we're going to talk about careers, and this was actually the plan. Like all along, episode 8 was planned to be talking about careers in your 20s, and it just became like ironic timing. And I mentioned before that I had like listened to some things that I said in the previous episodes, like, oh, what did I say? Like, I don't know. There was just some bits where I referenced my job and my company and how much I love it, and like, and I still agree with those things, but it's just funny now listening to that of like, I was saying this stuff and then now I'm laid off and I don't have a job. So yeah, let's talk about careers today. We'll talk about careers in your 20s. And I'm in a very unique place to talk about this right now. So I'm interested to see like where I go with it, and to hear from y'all like how like your career has progressed in your 20s, because this is such a defining decade in terms of where you're going to go and how you are, like where you are now and how you got there. Okay, so getting into careers, I think that there is a very big pressure of finding your career in your 20s. It feels like there is like a timeline of these are the years that you need to be figuring it out. And as you approach the end of your 20s, I feel like the pressure gets more to be like knowing who you are in your career as well as who you are in general. But the pressure just grows and grows as you approach 30. At least that's how I'm envisioning it. I don't know what it's going to be like when you turn 30 or when you are in your 30s and you are likely still figuring out your career. But to me, I feel like this is like, there's the 20s and it's just like, this is the time to figure out everything. What a pressure. Like, figure out everything. Figure out your personal life, figure out relationships, figure out, who you are, who you want to be, figure out your career and what you want to do for the rest of your life. I just see that there is a pressure to have a clear direction, a pretty linear path of like choosing, you study something and then you enter the field and you kind of move up within it. And then, it's just a linear progression forward. Maybe that's just me who has these kind of expectations of myself of like just moving forward. And the reality is, though, it's not linear. I am like all over the map. I started out, so just to talk about my career and what that's looked like, I don't even know what is the word career. Like, what is to me, okay, I guess like a career feels very established. So if I was a lawyer and I went to law school and then now I'm like a senior lawyer and then like, or I don't know, senior partner, and then I'm going to be a partner at the firm. And that to me is like a career. It's like you chose something and then you're moving forward with that. What I have done, I don't know that I call that a career. I call that having jobs. Is there a difference between a career and a job? Wondering if y'all think the same thing. Career versus job. Yeah, because I don't really feel like confident in being like, this is what my career has been. But anyways, this has been like my previous jobs. So whenever I graduated from college, as I talked about this, I moved to Czech Republic and then I worked as an English teacher. I worked as an English teacher for a little over, I think like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, because then I was also a private English teacher on the side. Started off doing that, it was also it wasn't like for a school. It was for a school. It was for a language school. So it's a little bit more unstructured. It feels a bit more entrepreneurial in the way of like, I have mini lessons with adults and then with children and then, with all of the age ranges, and I'm not sitting in front of a classroom like at a school teaching a room full of like 20 children. That's how that was how my first job unfolded. And I had a lot of jobs since I think when I was 15, my parents, they forced me to have a job. Can you believe that? So I've had like plenty of small jobs, of course, like growing up. That was my first like post-grad job. And then I got pretty burnt out doing that because it was during COVID. I was working online and I worked a lot. Like I would have really long days. Like I would start at 7 a.m. or maybe 8 a.m. and then go till some of my lessons would end at 8:30 p.m. But they were just like kind of spread out throughout the day. So it's not like I was literally working 13 hours, but I would have a couple lessons, then I would have a break and then another lesson. It was just kind of spread out and it felt like it took over everything. And just with the online aspect, it really just felt like I was in my room a lot, and then it would be gloomy outside, and I was learning about seasonal depression. It was just a lot of stuff at once, and then COVID, and we can't really socialize like we normally would. So all that being said, I burned out and was done. And I actually this is interesting to think about because I quit that job without having another job, which is like, okay, that's not the craziest thing ever to do, but I mean, in hindsight, that is kind of like, pretty ballsy, I guess I would say, because I was living in Czech Republic and it's not, I guess I knew I could always go back to teaching English. That was always like, it was like I quit, but I knew if I went back in 2 months, they'd let me because they wanted me to work for them and because the jobs teaching English were just so plentiful. So it was quitting, but knowing I can always go back, and I had that safety blanket of teaching English. But actually at the time, my goal, and I remember telling my students this, I was like, you know what, like I'm done, when I told them that I'm not going to be their teacher anymore, and telling them like what I was going to do. And my plan had been, I was going to start a blog and become a blogger. I mean, this is just like, I've had so many times in my life where I'm like, I'm done. Like I'm going to just like do something creative finally. Ironically, we're going to talk about that today. Ironically, we're going to talk about that today too. But yeah, so I did do some creative stuff at that time, but didn't really last long. I think I was, at the same time still looking for a job, maybe. And yeah, I stumbled across a job. I ended up working for a startup, and I was doing marketing and communications. If you're not watching this, I'm quoting that because I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I think that was like my title. I was marketing and communications lead. There was 4 of us in this company. It was a really, really like first days of the startup. But that was great. It was like a great foundation for the next job, which was then at Toggle. And I then learned like the startup world. I learned how to kind of do LinkedIn. It was just those like foundational years for getting a taste of the tech industry and startup industry. And I really liked it. But yeah, I lasted there, I think a little bit less than a year. And when that company was in Prague. So that was a Prague-based startup. And then from there, I started looking for another job because I was like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing still. This isn't exactly for me, and start putting out feelers. But the interesting thing is, like, I've never known how to look for a job because I don't know what I'm looking for. But then I found Toggle, and I found this job called community manager. And the way that I applied to this job was actually just taking a skills test, and I did really well on it. And okay, moral of the story, obviously I got the job. And that was whole startup world again, but to a different level because Toggle was actually like an established company, and it was the most amazing experience. Like working at Toggle was great. Lots of great experience, it's an Estonian company. So I got really to learn about Estonians, and they're very similar to Finns. So that's been fun to see, and got like exposure to they're not the Nordics, but the Baltics. But just that communication style. And in general, like this company is fully remote. So I worked with people from, like most people that I worked with were in a different country. So that was also really great for my own communication and growth in my professional career, and just also personally knowing how to communicate with people from so many different places where communication can be so different and varied from country to country. So working at Toggle was really great for me. And as I said, loved it. And yeah, it's weird to even talk about it now as like working at Toggle as if I don't work there anymore, because it really is so fresh still. Because yeah, as like I got laid off, and then I hadn't even been in Helsinki. We were in Vasa at the time that I got laid off, and then left straight on the trip, and then really have been back in Helsinki for a week. So it's not even been a full week of when I was supposed to be back at work. I was supposed to start work last Wednesday again. So I am, currently still in the fresh days of feeling like, wow, I don't work there anymore. This is really weird. I'm not checking Slack or Intercom or any of those tools that I would be looking at all the time. So all of this to say, I just gave you a lot of details. Like maybe you skipped through all of that, but on my career, as I said, career progression, don't even know if I can call it a career, but absolutely not linear. But I mean, also at the same time, it's like some things did link to others. Like for example, starting that job in Prague in the startup world did open, I think, the door to Toggle, because then I could say like, I worked for a startup. I know that industry. I know how it works. And then I also worked a little bit remotely, and then, or I worked hybrid. So that all lended itself to a job at Toggle. But now I'm just at this point where, I'm stepping back again, and I have a couple months to figure out like what I'm doing, and I don't know what I'm doing. And this is, as I said, great timing to have this episode, because talking about your career in your 20s is like such a big part of who you are, and a big part of who you think you're going to become, and all of this, because like a career is huge. I mean, it's what you do the majority of your week. And so to feel like it's up in the air, or you don't know where you want to go with it, can, I think, lead to a lot of self-doubt or worry about, do you have it figured out? Are you doing everything you should be doing to go where you want to go? Where do you even want to go? So it's a huge question. In terms of a career being linear, as I said at the beginning, like just kind of progressing forward in one industry. I have always been jealous of people who studied, for example, to go to medical school or to be a lawyer or to be an accountant or to be a nurse or to be something, and you know what you're going to do. Because my degree was in international studies, communication and media, and then Spanish and a minor in business. And that's all great and dandy, but it was so open-ended. I didn't ever leave college being like, okay, so I'm going to be an accountant, or okay, so I'm going to be a doctor, which I think that that's the majority of jobs, really, is that you don't know. They're very broad, but I am, as y'all have picked up on, probably, I am a person who really wants to know what I'm going to be doing, when, where, why, how. And so to study something broad then like leaves so many doors open, which is such a blessing. But then also, I'm craving that. I'm craving answers. I'm craving stability and like understanding where I'm going. But I have to remind myself, even people who study one thing and it seems like that would lead to a specific career can pivot, can not like what they're doing, can do something like totally different than their degree. And so that doesn't necessarily mean like they have everything figured out and now it's easy and they're doing what they love. But there are, of course, people that they just know what they want to do and they're doing it. And like, kudos to y'all. That's amazing. And I think a lot of us wish we were more like that. But for those of us who aren't, I would love to hear from people who are in a similar boat to me, where maybe you are on a trajectory that's a little bit more open-ended, and how are you navigating that at this time in your life? Is it stressful to you, or is it something that you like thrive within? You're glad to feel like anything is possible and you can do whatever you want. I'm now thinking that like maybe more people are feeling like I'm feeling, like you're not on a clear path forward with your career, even though it feels like, this pressure building like in your 20s, that as you're getting closer to that age of, I don't know, needing to figure stuff out, that you really need to figure out what your career is, but that most of us are probably just like doing what I'm doing, which is, taking the next job that looks good and then, I don't know, maybe calling it your career. But yeah, in terms of what I'm thinking now, because where am I? Like, what am I doing? I've just been laid off. I've just taken a big trip. I've just kind of reset. I have what I feel like is I got a couple months severance, and then Marcus has a good job. So I am very, very lucky to be in the situation that I am, where I'm not like feeling like I just need to take anything that's coming at me next. So I'm very thankful for that, not taking that for granted. But within this time, I do feel like I have a moment to kind of step back, collect myself a bit, and figure out what I want to do. I think there's so many positives to having a full-time job, a stable income, have that, your like vacation, all the benefits of having a full-time job. Obviously, huge, that's amazing. But I have always wanted to own my own business. I've always wanted to be my own boss. I've always wanted to do content creation. So I am thinking that I'm going to be trying to do that. I don't know what my goal is. I need to figure that out. But I'm giving myself some time to kind of figure out what I'm exactly testing right now. But I am wanting to actually give it a real shot, because as I said, I tried to blog 10 years ago when I was in Spain. And then I tried just 2 years ago, or how long ago was that? Okay, 4 years ago, whenever I'd quit the teaching job, and in between teaching and the first startup was like, I'm going to be a blogger and I'm going to do creative stuff. And at that time it had actually been, I even did this whole like branding thing. I forgot about that too. I branded my name Anchor and Soar, which I talked about, I think, in the last episode, and was like going to start a TikTok and all of this stuff. And then, I didn't. So this time I want to try. I want to go all in with actually like taking content creation more seriously, taking it like, and kind of dedicating my days to it and seeing how it goes. But at the same time, balancing that with trying to look for a full-time job, just so that I feel smart. And And as I said, I don't really like, there's nothing wrong with me going back to some tech job. Like I love structure, and I love like knowing that a solid paycheck is coming in and all of that. So I think that I could still thrive within that environment, but I know that I would regret it if I don't take the next couple months and like really go all in with content, try to grow my socials, try to grow this podcast, and see kind of where it leads me. And then maybe in the long run, I get a job, and then this is more of a still like a sustainable thing that I do for fun on the side as like a hobby, or a little bit more than that maybe. Of course, it's a little bit nerve-wracking to try to do things that don't maybe necessarily fit the mold of like what a career will look like and like what that linear progression looks like. But I guess this is also what your 20s is for, is figuring out, it's like trying different stuff and maybe absolutely failing and then trying other stuff. But of course it is like, there is a lot of, what do I say? Like number one, like imposter syndrome of like, I think on Instagram right now, I have 125 followers, but I'm just posting as if like I have 1 million. Of course there's something a little bit cringe to that, but it is what it is. And also just saying that like I want to try content creation. It's also like a mainstream thing to a certain degree, is like, oh, she just wants to be a content creator. There's a lot of doubt, of course, that comes along with, well, like all of this, the career thing, plus the content creation, plus the imposter syndrome, plus the like kind of embarrassment of trying and putting myself out there and then potentially very publicly failing. Although I don't even know what failing looks like. Like this is something that I've talked to my therapist about, not specifically failing within content creation, but I am like I hate public speaking, absolutely hate public speaking. And like I get really like anxious, like almost panic attacks. It's terrible. But I did like a matron of honor speech last year at my best friend's wedding. And when I talked to my therapist about it, he's like, what is the worst that could happen? Like, let's talk through the worst case scenario. What is that? What does that look like? You faint? Like you can't even get up there. What does that look like? And I think I'm going to try to do that with this. Like, what does the worst case scenario look like of like trying content creation for a couple months, and what does that look like? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Maybe a couple people are going to judge me and be like, yikes, she tried and it didn't go well. But honestly, that's even thinking that people care. And I think that's also another thing, is that I need to remind myself that people don't care. Like, people don't care. They are so focused on themselves and what they're doing that there's not a lot of room for judgment to other people, I think. Or maybe like, okay, quick judgment on a Instagram reel or something, yes, but like long-term, like considering, oh, Mandy, like, can you believe like she thought she could do XYZ? Like, that's realistically like very far from happening, because not that many people care. So all this being said, careers in your 20s are very interesting, or careers in general, but like figuring out your career at this stage of life, I think, is really scary, fun, exciting. I think my layoff has been scary, sad for sure, and also freeing. Like, it's fun that I get to now be like, what am I doing? Who am I going to be? And even if in 3 months I'm working at some tech job here in Helsinki, okay, like, it's something new, it's something fresh. And it's also terrifying, because maybe in a year I could be still unemployed. And then Marcus is like, all right, we need to start saving some money. Like, when are you going to start working? But yeah, I think this is a very good practice for me personally in letting go of my timelines and my shoulds and musts and like all of these, just like good practice for me in this time to step back and try to let go of control for a bit and just see, like, I was going to say see what happens. I don't love saying that. There's something about that makes me feel like, I think I've touched on this in a previous episode, is like letting life happen to you versus you making things happen. So I don't know that I necessarily want to say just like seeing what happens, but rather seeing what I can accomplish in the next however long, seeing where I go intentionally, while trying different things that I want to try and I'm excited about trying. But not to say that I am not absolutely petrified and feeling slightly lost and scared, because I have lost all of my structure. I have lost what I do for, I don't know what percentage of your week are you working? Like, I don't know, 75% or something. So yeah, it's scary. It's open-ended again. I have talked over and over again how I love the timelines. I love knowing what I'm going to do. I love plans, all of this stuff. And that has all been ripped away from me recently. So let's see where I go with it. I'm excited to just share more with y'all. I think these kind of more open-ended episodes are like fun too, where I'm just kind of chatting with y'all about what I'm up to, especially as I kind of progress through the next few months of figuring out what I'm doing career-wise. I think that will be fun to kind of keep y'all updated, maybe have some more episodes on this topic in particular, and just kind of what it's like to go through this season right now. So I'm going to try to be okay of being in this in between, and there was a couple points that I wanted to hear from y'all in this episode. Please DM me. I love to hear that people are actually listening to the podcast, and I would love to hear from what other people are also thinking and feeling during this stage, because then I can bring that into the podcast as well. That's like what this is for. It's like community and feeling like, there's other people that are experiencing and feeling and living the same things, and we're not all, floating about alone as much as we might think that we are. Anywho, glad to be back, and this will be out in just a couple days, and see y'all then next week, because now I'm going to try to keep up with the weekly then, now that I'm back. So